Good morning and greetings from Stockholm. It's so great to have you all here today. My name is Robin Kurten. I'm a growth ambassador here at Staria. And well, it's so nice to have you all here joining us on this morning webinar. And I'm especially excited to have you, Andreas, here today, CFO at Qbtech. Warmly welcome. So great to have you here.
Very nice to be here. Thank you.
In today's session, we are going to discuss Qbtech's successful NetSuite implementation project. And we are going to discuss a bit of key insights and some lessons learned from the project as well. But before we jump into the project, and because I know these are things that the listeners think they are interested in, it would still be great to give the listeners a bit of more context of, if you, Andreas, could tell us a little bit about yourself and also about what Qbtech does.
Yes, indeed. So my name is Andreas Nilsson. I have been different finance positions for it's more than 15 years, starting in more larger companies and the latest 10 years in small companies that want to be big.
Want to be big.
So I have been in the SaaS space for the last 10 years. And here at Qbtech, we are a company working with ADHD assessments. So it's not a diagnosis, but it's a part of a diagnosis when patients meet doctors to assess if they have ADHD. And it's a test that is done on a computer. And we are now an online test, so we can sell pretty much all over the world. And the current markets that we are in is the biggest markets are the UK and the US, but we're based in Stockholm, Sweden, and we also have a subsidiary in Germany.
Okay, cool. Yeah, there are many markets already, and maybe more to come. Who knows? All right, yeah, but really interesting, and it has been a pleasure to also being able to follow you already for over a year already. So yeah, super interesting. But hey, let's move on and start discussing the actual project. And I thought it would be great to start a bit of introducing also how the project was executed from the project start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would be great to also to share a bit of a high level timeline for the audience here today. So we could look at your journey at Qbtech is like, there was a kickoff of the project back in March 2023. And this is, of course, a special thing with the project as well, because looking into the next phase, where the actual analyze, the BRD of the project was approved, that was also the same time that you joined the company Qbtech. So basically, you were not a part of the selection of the system and everything, and also about the analyze phase. And I guess that was also one of the reasons that we are going to discuss maybe some challenges and things along the project, I would say.
It's a little bit funny because at my previous job, you were there pitching Staria and NetSuite. And I thought it was a great idea. But I quit, and then when I quit, they implemented it. So I was really happy to meet you again.
It was. That's true. That was a nice sort of coincidence, and also like, that was nice. Yeah, but also looking at, after you joined the project, and in June we had the analyze phase was done. We also looked at the planned go live in September 2023. But as we can see in many projects, things changes due to X, Y, and Z. And so the actual in September we postponed the planned go live till October.
Mm-hmm.
And in September we are going to plan to go live to January 2024, and that was also the actual go live. So what would you say, since you joined later in the stage, what would you say were the biggest sort of challenges in this. I know that we are going to discuss a bit more challenges in the next topic, but if looking back on this, the timeline from project to start, what would you have done like differently?
I guess you're missing one bullet point here, and that is between June and September, when I started to change the BRD, when I got into the
even though it was accepted already.
Yeah, but it's difficult when you start in the middle of a project. My predecessor had decided some things. I didn't believe in all those things, so I needed to make some other decisions.
Yeah.
And I know the project manager. She was really wanted to deliver on the timeline, and she had a hard time with me. But it was really great to be able to have an agile project.
Yeah.
It's a difficult balance, because we try to push it to just be done with it, but then we realized we don't have enough time. And then in the October go live, we realized if we launch now, we're not ready.
Yeah.
So better to postpone it and close 2023 in the old systems, and then we have a full year to sort any kind of mess up before it's time to be audited again.
Okay.
So and that has been a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. So would you say that, you know, coming in June and also being, by the way, we have this ongoing use ERPs project going on. What were you sort of focusing on? Was it more to sort of, I guess one part was, of course, on the one hand side, understand the Qbtech's business and you know, how do you want to structure it? But at the same time also understand, you know, a new system like NetSuite, even though you had the previous interest to the system as well. But would you say that there were any key priorities, or how was it?
It was a difficult balance with three things, I would say. One is to understand the way Qbtech was operating in the past. Two, how NetSuite could help us in the future. And three, like how Qbtech needs to be transformed into the future. Exactly. Because what has taken us where we were was not going to take us to where we want to go.
Yeah.
So it was a world of very much moving parts. And understand what is going to fit in, what do we have, what do we need, what should we keep, what should we like build new into the future.
Yeah.
So it has been a year of exploration.
Yeah. I guess so. I can only imagine. And one final question on this topic when we look at the actual go live, because that's of course also a time when you transition from you know, old systems, and at that time it was a local system for each market, for each subsidiary. Did you see any, how would you say that part going over from, you know, several systems to one centralized global system? How did that transition go?
I would say technically it was no problem, but the problem was internal and process focused. We realized then that we have been doing things in 4 very different ways, and to try to sync people. And our team, we have a finance team of 3 people in Stockholm. We have consultants in London, in Germany, and on the West Coast in the US. So to sync people with different time zones, it was difficult, but more from an internal process point of view than from the technical NetSuite view. Just to get everyone to understand, no, it is this cost center that should be on the invoices. The story invoices. They must have this.
Exactly. That's a good example. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I guess that we are already a bit of touching the next, I would say, key area during this discussion is, of course, I mean, jumping already into the challenges, and it doesn't necessarily need to be the biggest challenges, but of course to sort of discuss a bit around the challenges and of course also how they were tackled, because I think that one thing that we know for sure entering a project, that there will be challenges, but we don't know which challenges it will be. Of course, we from Staria, we can point out on the sort of the most frequent challenges that occur, but of course every project is unique. But how would you say that the biggest challenge were like during the project, and how would you say they were tackled? Do you think that, I mean, if we look at the 4 different markets, for instance, were there any country that you would say, I mean, that were more challenging than the other, or?
No, I would say the biggest challenge for me personally was that I was not like fully in my role as a CFO. So I did not know what are the exact specifics of what we need in the US, in the UK. Exactly. I was heavily leaning on the consultants, and it was so much to do with all of it. So I had to trust that they were making the right calls. Yeah. And I suspected they weren't. But so I just felt like, oh, they're saying the wrong things, and it was like money just flying out the door. But I don't know better. So I think that was a big challenge, not knowing Qbtech, what we need, that I didn't have a clear picture of. This is exactly what we need, and how we want to order it.
Yeah. And I guess that we are touching on that as well now, that looking at you were on Qbtech side, you were not alone from Qbtech running the project, and looking back at the other sort of key stakeholders from your team, would you have done it any different today? Because I kind of know that you have mentioned this before, so I mean, could you tell a bit more about that how to
Yeah, I think in the BRD and in the test UAT in the testing process, we tried to involve all the countries equally, so they were all acquainted with all the parts of the system. But I really think that the different countries wasn't a big thing, not for our countries. It would have been better to have like a super user for each process. Because it's like building a house from scratch. You can make any choices, and you have to make all the choices. Yeah. So you must make sure that it works from start to finish. Exactly. And that is difficult when it's for us, like 4 teams doing a little bit of everything, sending tickets all over the place, and no control. Yeah. So I would have separated the responsibility by a process.
Exactly. So kind of a super user like your, I don't know, SME subject matter experts or
someone
process.
Is like is running the accounts payable to make sure that it works from receiving the invoice to payment of the invoice, and because there are a lot of things that can go wrong. Like you cannot write the account number in this format. You cannot have this setting in that format. A lot of things that you just need to figure out. Yeah. And it's like that for all the processes. So now we have started to do that, and it works a lot better.
Okay. Good to hear. And one final question on this challenge topic is, of course, that we know many of our customers, and also in very, I would say, early stage of the discussions, we discuss about data migration. So just shortly, would you say that was a challenge for you, migrating all the data from your previous systems into the new system? Was that I mean, it can also be a short answer, like yes or no.
Not really, because our old system was so decentralized, and it was so hard to aggregate. So we didn't put that much emphasis on having the historical data right. We just focused on having from 1st of January forward to be right, and that has been challenging enough. But the data migration, that was no problem.
Okay, yeah. Great to hear. And I mean, moving on a bit, I guess we are going to touch base on these challenges all the time, but still moving on to the next part sort of, and also discussing a bit of parts that were successful during the project, and of course also parts that now afterwards, how could they have been done in a different way. So what would you say, I mean, starting with the successful part and the smooth parts in the project, do you have anything that you would like to bring up, like now, what was, what you felt were especially smooth or successful?
Yes, I think a very good thing from my point of view was the cooperation with you at Storia. And I
That's great to hear.
I felt that many times that I was a very difficult buyer because I was when I was learning stuff, I was changing the requirements and changing the go live dates and changing everything. And it was really nice to have a tight dialogue with the project team, and we made the best of everything.
Yeah.
And because it's easy, you think, even if you are more into the business than I was, you think something in the beginning of a project, then you start building it, and you discover stuff that you hadn't thought about.
Exactly.
So it's really important to have a good dialogue and to deal with the unexpected, and that was worked very good.
That was also, I mean, I know from our part, I've been a part of the steering group during the project, but also talking with the project team. So they said also that, I mean, yeah, of course, I mean, the project had challenges. We had some changed go live dates as well, but I mean, the communication was key. So that was really a part that worked in this project, and is all, of course, I mean, key in every project. But I mean, looking back at then, how would you say things you would have now done differently looking back at the project? You mentioned one with having a process owner, but can you come up with anything else now looking back at the project?
I would have one thing that I did not realize. I have never been, or very little experience from these bigger kind of systems. So even in the pretty big company that I was in before, we used Fort Knox in all our subsidiaries. And in Fort Knox, everything just works pretty good. And then there's some things that you cannot do. All of those things can be done in NetSuite, but the thing that I didn't realize was that the basic things are more difficult than I expected. And NetSuite is big for big processes and building it exactly like you want, but it can be a little bit slow when you have to manually process a lot of transactions. And like if you want to manually receive the accounts payable, work with that, compared to you have an automated process that just takes all of them in a batch. That's fine. But to manually upload them one by one, we don't have that many invoices, so I thought no problem. It will just go smooth. But it's a little bit slow. So I have never before understood, why do people even have this
supporting software? I guess
supporting software. Why is that needed? But now I understand it. And I would have. I think it's good to what should live in NetSuite and what should live in the supporting softwares.
Exactly. And I guess that this is also a part that we are coming back to the, when we discussed about that you were, entering the project after the analyze phase, because of course, these are the supporting software. For instance, I mean, we have our dedicated and strategical partners at Staria who we work together with. And of course, both during the actual kickoff. So if we go back to the sort of the pre-sales phase of the project, and also during the analyze, that's of course a time where we can of course discover together which sort of supporting softwares could be a good fit. And I guess that is one reason to it. Again, coming back to the challenge that you were sort of thrown into the project in a way.
It's also difficult to really understand it. We were living in a reality with 4 different softwares in each country, and everything was working fine. And to fully understand what we needed in the new reality and not just recreating what we had.
Yeah, exactly.
It's difficult to fully understand it.
I think you are quite spot on there, like rebuilding the things that you have. I mean, that's not the thing that you want to achieve with the new system.
Exactly.
At least in most cases. Yeah. All right, but then to the last part, and I guess that already the listeners have heard a lot of lessons learned and key insights, but looking back at the lessons and how these can be applied to future projects, maybe to future projects for yourself, but also for future, how would you sort of recommend other companies and CFOs to prepare themselves, and maybe also the teams if they are about to implement an ERP? Do you have any tips on that? How would you prepare?
The biggest challenge for us was in the internal processes and just having them centralized.
Yeah.
And not from a technical point of view, but just to get the people in the UK to understand that from now on we need to have an invoice. We're not going to pay without an invoice.
Yeah.
Like those basic things that went unnoticed when they were more autonomous. So I would just say have a designated stakeholder for each process flow, both in NetSuite and in the organization, to make sure it really works all the way up until that person who cannot open his emails to approve things, to make sure he does it. So that's one thing, and then just like do it. I think now it's been like in tough year with a lot of things, but where we're now, we are planning to launch into new geographies, and I feel very positive about adding one more country or one more subsidiary. That will be seamless, pretty much. And the great thing is that it's so much easier to have centralized processes where you can make sure everyone's doing it the same way.
Yeah, really interesting. And I still have some questions, but I would also like to raise here at the same time, as we are having like six minutes or so left. So please, if you have any questions, listeners out there, so please enter them to the chat box, and Inessa here will monitor the questions if they come in. But let's see if we have some questions popping in. But again, last but not least, going back to the lessons learned and maybe some key insights, and what would you say are the sort of the top? Would you have any top 3 tips or hints or lessons learned that you would like to share here now? I guess that we have already touched point them, but things that 3 things that the listeners here will remember logging off the webinar.
One is just to understand that regardless of how much you plan, reality will happen, and it's good to have this testing that is done before. It can be good to have a testing after you have made your modifications also, because you make this plan, then you make these changes, and it's easy to sit there and think, what did we do? how was it changed? Because exactly. You're in the middle of it. So to have testing after the project, I would really recommend to make sure that you understand what you have built. And then, like I have said, to have designated people for each process that can make sure that everything is according to the way we want it, and we understand what we have. Key. And then put some time in exploring the supporting modules, and understanding what do we need, how should we build it.
Okay, that was so. Take at least these with you guys today after after this webinar. But I guess we can't see the screen, so do we have any question from the audience? Because I mean, I certainly have more questions also. So, I mean, we are now in October, approximately 10 months after using NetSuite. How would you say, how have it impacted your daily work?
Well, we have after the go live in January, then we released the billing module in 1st of July, and that was like the most difficult process for us.
Yeah,
we have
that will be another webinar or so, or we need at least more time for that.
But we have had some changes internally in personnel also. But now we are really having this catch-up effect. A lot of things falling into place, and we understand how we can do it, how we can report on it, and we feel really confident into to really get the efficiencies and the reporting and everything that we want for the future. So I think
starting to see that
now we're like approaching the steady state, reaping the benefits of it.
Exactly.
So it's
I can see that we might have a question that have come in through the chat box.
Yes, we do have a question from Vadim, which says, hello, did you implement treasury transactions like FX deposits, loans, intercompany and investments, own funds transfers in NetSuite, or you use some external system for them?
No, we don't have much of that. We are using we only have some internal transfer of money, and we're just booking it as advanced into company journals in NetSuite. So we have an banking integration that is sending all the transactions, but it's mainly vendors and customer transactions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but good question there. And I mean, one last thing, and I would say, what when you are having, for example, lunch or some meetups with your fellow CFOs, what are the things that you say when you maybe discuss, like, okay, we just went live with the new system, and then we actually continued the system right away, implementing a billing module. What would be your sort of key message to your fellow CFO? Is it something to be afraid of, or yeah?
No, I guess before we had NetSuite, and to some point still, there was a big confusion about our customers because we did not have a good tool or system to map them out.
Yeah.
Our customers are it's doctors, they have clinics, so it could be a customer, it's a clinic. What's different? Sometimes the customer is a clinic, sometimes it's a customer like a region that has multiple clinics.
Yeah.
And to be able to build a logic where we could fit them all in and understand who is who and who lives where, that has been a massive help. And we have built that with the custom segments features in NetSuite, and that is making us understand
your customers.
understand our customers. And
they are quite important.
I am still like trying to figure out this contract, like where does it belong? And exactly. before NetSuite, we had a big Excel file, and it was a mess. And now
we only have a small Excel file, I guess.
A small mess.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Andreas, we are running out of time, actually. I mean, time flies when you are having fun. I would really like to say that thank you so much for joining this webinar. I mean, I really hope that it was, giving answers and tips and the key lessons, to all the listeners out there. So thank you very much for joining, and also thank you for the audience of joining to this morning webinar. We, of course, at Staria would like to remind you of our other upcoming events, and of course NetSuite events. So we are October 30th, we are throwing the Nordic NetSuite Summit in Helsinki. You are warmly welcome to come. We will also send out a link to the summit in the email after this webinar as well. So thank you, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.